Hey everyone, welcome to Wizard News. Let's get into it. You have definitely heard about how Elon Musk is screwing up the company that he recently bought. I know everyone has had to have heard about Elon Musk and Twitter at this point. Apparently, they've got about 2,700 staff left whenever they started with about 7,500. So, somewhere between a quarter and a third of their working capital or working capacity. And now Elon says that they're hiring engineers and sales. So I wanted to give a few thoughts and perspective on this, and also just kind of do tell a funny story. Basically, about a year or so ago, my parents were giving me a big rant about money and how I needed to stop being such a millennial and start pulling myself up by my bootstraps. It was the weirdest rant because it was completely not representative of the actual things that were happening at the time. Because this was like a year after COVID had set in, for instance. So at one point, my dad says to me, just like this big outburst. This is a year ago. Emphasis. Why can't you be more like Elon Musk? And I had no reply at the time because I was already well aware of the fact that Elon Musk had rich parents, and my parents are well, they didn't start out rich. Now they're pretty well off. They just don't want to share any of their money. So, they're like every other rich person in this country, I guess. But Elon is his own weird little mixed bag of nuts. So after that, I actually just kept an eye on Elon. I was like, fine, you think I need to be so much like Elon? I'm gonna watch Elon and see why it is that I can't be like him. And the reason I can't be like him is that I'm just not that crazy. And by the way, I have no parents. I have disowned these people. Um so let's talk about Elon and what he's doing with Twitter here. I think one of the really hilarious things is like he seems to purport to actually still be keeping this business operational and seems to think that's going to work. And So I've been the engineer that's built something that I didn't know how long it would actually last until it just completely broke and then nobody would actually be able to use the system. And I had told this to my bosses at the time. I was like, "Hey, this thing here, it's not going to last. I don't know when it's going to break." I mean, it's like, Schrodinger's cat. You do not know when the beta particle is going to decay or the gamma particle is going to be released or whatever. You don't know when the radioactive element is actually going to have its decay occur. That the entire point of the whole Schrodinger's cat thing is you just don't know when the nuclear event will happen. It can never be actually predetermined. It just simply happens when it happens. Um, and that's what it's like whenever a component breaks for software or hardware. You don't really know exactly when it's going to happen, especially because the more complex the systems are, the more that there's either safeguards and fail safes in the way of something catastrophic happening immediately, or, and this is the part that gets really frustrating, it's simply too complicated for you to know why it hasn't broken yet. Which, by the way, sometimes there's been times where I've worked on a site and I've needed it to break and it wouldn't break. And that was actually the biggest problem in my life and the site's life at the time. And so technology is unpredictable. It does not do what the engineers tell it to do. So I don't know. Like, I drew cards a while ago, a few days ago, like, hey, how long is the site going to last? And the answer, I think, was basically like, it'll last until it breaks. So again, like, how long until we see some kind of major error show up on Twitter that's viewable to the public? So I have a reversed 9 of Pentacles, which I think means less than 9 days. So sometime within a week, we'll probably see a major error on the Twitter site. And what kind of error is this going to be? I don't want to infer too much from the card because that was about duration, not about what type of error. Definitely going to be involving something where people can't get into their accounts or they can't use their accounts. Probably the ability to tweet will be affected. Maybe their ability to moderate. This is like a big personal power thing, and I feel like it's on the part of the user. So there's going to be some kind of capability, like major capability, that's either taken down or impacted because of a big Twitter error. Now, how will the public hear about this? What will the news look like? How will we know this is what we're hearing about? What's that going to look like? Expect a whole lot of nothing from Twitter on it. You're just going to see the error and infer it, and you might find out about it after the fact. It's likely you find out about it after the fact, and the people who experienced it just kind of like, don't get actual replies and help. It just gets fixed, and then Twitter never mentions it again. Out of curiosity, what kind of plan does Elon have in place for if there's a catastrophic fail at Twitter? He's going to bring in one of the Tesla engineers or outsource anyone from any of his friends. If there's a major breakdown, he's going to try to just hire somebody to come in right away from outside and fix it. So third-party solution. He's relying on third-party solutions for one of the largest, most complicated pieces of technology on the planet. Okay. You can go with that, but it's not cheaper. How much confidence does Elon have that the site is going to remain up for the rest of the year? He is really hoping that it will last the rest of the year, but he secretly suspects it will not. So he's basically losing sleep over whether or not Twitter's going to stay up the rest of the year. But he is hopeful that it will. Apparently, his mindset sort of thing, his way of thinking is like be optimistic first and then be extremely anxious whenever you're sleeping. What a great way to go. So that's kind of a run of Twitter cards on things. Twitter cards, tarot cards, Twitter-based tarot cards. I don't know. It might not be a viable deck for like after 6 months or so. Is it a good time to be establishing a presence outside of Twitter if one has most of their strengths based in Twitter? If you want monetization, stay on both. Stay on Twitter as long as Twitter is giving you money or giving you returns, giving you product. But go where it's going to be good for you. Don't stick around Twitter because you like Twitter. Like what are the best alternatives to Twitter at this point? Or what alternatives to Twitter are we going to be looking at, let's say in a month? See, I like to change my questions sometimes. That's why I talk it out loud. I actually want a different answer, which is what's going to be the top of the dog pile when it comes to the Twitter replacements and solutions? 10 of Cups. I honestly think that it's going to be more of a diaspora at this point, that it's going to be several different sites that all kind of account for the hole that Twitter leaves behind. And there does seem to be some room for Twitter possibly here. Is Twitter going to get bought by a different owner? Like, what's Twitter looking like in terms of ownership for the next 5 years? Read the room. Basically, if it looks obvious that Twitter's going to get sold, then Twitter's going to get sold. I don't see Elon keeping this long term. But hey, we'll see how it goes. There's a lot of decisions that can be made. A lot of times I get get cards like this whenever it's a matter of choice. And so it's like, even though someone is 80% most likely to make this choice and 20% most likely to make this choice, you still don't know which choice they're going to make until after they make the choice. There's still room for them to make that 20% choice. So this allows a lot for decisions to be made, which is why future readings can be really dicey. You're answering a complicated question. And technically, since there's many futures that are available to us right in this moment, there's a lot that could be said about the future. But what's the advice that's actually useful for the querent? That's the big question. So trying to think from the perspective of what information will actually be useful for me right now, as opposed to what I'm curious about, really helps. I think that there's kind of like a MP meter, sort of tarot meter, divination meter in someone's head that kind of gets depleted each time you answer a question. And when it runs out, you're not really going to be reading well anymore. It's kind of a psychic ability buffer, and or maybe it's like a psychic battery. Um, I think it recharges over time, especially like during sleep. The psychic ability battery charges. And so if you waste too much of that battery on questions that don't really matter, you're not going to be able to have a battery left to answer the questions that do matter that you come up later in the reading. So one of the things that I try to focus on is just asking the right question is probably 90% of divination.